Google search defines a sequel as a published, broadcast, or recorded work that continues the story or develops the theme of an earlier one. But what it fails to mention is that when it comes to movies and to a lesser extent books, sequels tend to be pretty, well, awful. I have this conversation a lot with my friends, and I know there are exceptions to the rule, but on the whole, sequels just tend to be horrible. I'm not talking about planned sequels like trilogies, but the other, crappier kind. You know the ones, where a genuinely good film comes out and the story is all wrapped up nice and neat in a bow, and it's an excellent adventure and the bad guy is dead and the good guy might also be dead, but probably isn't. Then because it's actually a good film, it does really well both critically and at the box office, and that's the end of it. Except it isn't, because at a brainstorming session months or even years down the line, some smarty pants gets the idea that people like things, and by doing something called a sequel, you can basically guarantee the same amount of revenue as the first film, because you're basically selling them the first film but again. Desert Planet? Check. Orphan Hero? Check. Death Star? Check. It's practically double the revenue for the same single idea. Get ready for Citizen Kane 2: Rosebud's Revenge, now showing in a cinema near you. This time it's personal. But it just isn't that simple. By creating a sequel, especially one that uses the same characters, you're running some serious risks. Firstly, you've got to open a story back up that was essentially finished in the minds of the audience, creating new problems and new bad guys in a world that had a happy ever after ending. Even if it wasn't a happy ever after ending, some endings can be so well executed that it just seems totally wrong to go back and revisit them. Secondly, you run the risk of flanderizing your characters. This is especially the case in comedy films, and is the issue where a genuinely funny and original moment from the first film is made a huge part of the character's personality for the sequel. In an attempt to recreate the humour from the first, the creators don't realise that one of the reasons it worked the first time is because of the originality. One of the reasons the Terminator sequel works so well is because they completely flipped the script on Schwartzbot's character. And thirdly, you run the risk of completely and utterly alienating your fans and turning all your most beloved characters and icons into fan service bullshit member berries in your soul-sucking attempt to sell an audience something they've already watched, and retconning the cool elephant head creatures so they're just big white humans in helmets, and ruining their mystery and giving The Hobbit 3 times as long as it should have been, and Okay, I'm calm now. So video games live in a really weird space when it comes to sequels. Because long and successful franchises are as old as dinosaur bones, and the technology to power video games has changed so fucking much in terms of graphical and gameplay capabilities in comparison to mediums such as cinema, there exists not only the sequel in terms of narrative and themes, but also in terms of shiny polygons and gameplay. Advances in AI and computing power especially can make huge shifts in how a game plays. Because of this, game developers have the opportunity to improve and refine their gameplay in a way that no other medium can. Even if the narrative isn't as well received, the changes to the gameplay, world design, and interactivity can be so much more advanced that both games can be considered great for different reasons. The original Last of Us was a great game in my eyes, and I fucking loved it. And even though everyone hates the story of the second one, you've got to agree that holy shit, that's fucking brutal, what the fuck? Since when can games do this shit? They clearly put the work into it gameplay wise. In comparison to films, there are so many great games that are sequels. Persona 5, Tekken 3, Nier Automata, Borderlands 2, God of War, Hitman 2, Tony Hawk's 2, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, Uncharted 4, Dark Souls, Skyrim. Even the original Metal Gear Solid and Red Dead Redemption are sequels. Like, I could sit here and name games all day because good game sequels build on their originals in a much better way than cinematic sequels. Cinematic sequels feel so much like cash grabs, and it's so hard to justify returning to a story, Like, you aren't going to be able to change the pacing or camera work in a way that's going to mean anything to 90% of your audience, but you can sure well add manuals to Tony Hawk, so now you can combo the entire level. Thanks so much. Oh, and now Mario can turn into all the enemies and completely change how the game is played. Thank you. And backstabs were totally overpowered and you didn't realize, Miyazaki-san, so now lots of enemies cover their backs to avoid it or fucking bash you with their shield when you try to circle round. Thank you, Dark Souls. In the same way that certain authors or auteur movie directors can make completely different stories of different genres and have them feel like a continuation in the same way a sequel would be, game developers can make games in completely different universes and have them all tied together by the game engine, or the gameplay, or just the general feel of the game. And this leads into what I think are the best examples of game sequels: thematic sequels. Now I'm going to talk about a game I haven't really talked about before on this channel. It's not very well known and honestly it's super underrated, but I think it's one of the best sequels I've ever experienced, and that's because it's not even a sequel, and that game is called Bloodborne. For those of you who don't know what Bloodborne is, it's a little known game by the same developers that make that one hard game everyone talks about called Dark Souls. Now Dark Souls was a good game, Dark Souls was a fucking excellent game, but it does have some issues. The aforementioned backstabs being too powerful. Well, the easy solution Bloodborne implemented was to make it so you needed to land a fully charged R2 to get a backstab, and my oh my are they hard to pull off now. The most obvious issue From Software must have felt towards Dark Souls was that defensive turtling was too boring and an easy win. This isn't even an apparent flaw until you actually go and play Bloodborne or the later Sekiro and realize the tweaks that have been made to what is essentially the same combat system of learning enemy attack patterns. Bloodborne especially just went full fucking nuclear on shields and removed them from the game entirely except for a wooden shield which has the description: "Shields are nice, but not if they engender passivity." Basically telling players that you can't fucking turtle in this game. Now the two shields in Bloodborne aren't useless by any means, but they certainly aren't the defensive easy mode that they were in Dark Souls. Now you've got to learn attack patterns a lot more carefully and dodge at the right time. To encourage this more aggressive play, enemies are roughly 5 times faster and do more damage, but you also have a lot more health and healing items. In the same vein, your attacks are much faster and enemies have much more health. Bloodborne also introduces the regain mechanic, which encourages you to regain health after taking damage by not backing away but continuing forward and attacking. This mechanic is just so fucking sick, like all of these changes play perfectly into the message the game is sending. This is not Dark Souls. You are a badass hunter and you are aggressive. Even the boss text is changed from victory achieved to prey slaughtered. It's a totally different game, but damn if it isn't a fucking amazing sequel. Bloodborne is so good that I haven't used a shield in a Dark Souls game since I played it. Seriously, I haven't once used a shield in Dark Souls 3 to block an attack. Sekiro changes things up even more by having defensive options like parrying and jumping become your most important tools, discouraging even the spamming of dodging and making sure you learn each enemy's moveset almost perfectly to succeed. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that sequels in games give a developer a chance to go back to what might be a very fun gameplay formula and make tweaks and changes to the core experience that make great games even better. And even if the narrative isn't as good overall, having essentially your favourite games but they look even better and play even better has to be a good thing. Even more than that, games can be sequels in terms of improved gameplay and graphics and animation, but tell an entirely new, fresh and engaging story in the process. Thank you to every developer that is consistently trying to improve their gameplay formula. Thank you to whoever wrote this item description, and thank you for watching. Cheers.